All right. We are doing our podcast today, Growing with Generosity, with Joe Maez team, the Joe Maez Group, but Mr. Joe Maez across the table from me here. And we're going to dive into some things, anything from where you got started, what your production, you're one of the most successful agents that I know personally in terms of just units. You're crushing 400 plus deals per year and growing. We're going to get into systems, process, hardships, and your entire story. So I'm looking forward to this.
I'm excited.
And let me ask you, do you believe, so I love to get people's answer about wins and losses and success and like failures. Like how do you look at things that happen in life?
Well, where I'm at in my life, right? I mean, I've never given up, but I can't say that I haven't felt defeated before in my life, right? So where I sit now, like the 44-year-old Joe, that's kind of like a 44-year-old, I feel like a Forrest Gump. I can look back at things as like, wow, that was silly. That I even stressed out about that I even thought the thoughts that I was thinking. Today, the guy that sits here says you can never give up, right? Or every mistake that you make is a lesson. That makes you strong. It's almost like building immunity.
That's it. Lessons.
Right? And there's nobody that's doing anything major and worthwhile that hasn't failed.
There's no failure. It's just lessons, and then how you handle that lesson and you move forward.
All it is it teaches you it's upgrading the system. You have your phone sitting right over there. Every time you're getting an upgrade. Why are you getting the upgrade on the phone? Well, they're working out some kind of a bug, right? How did they learn about the bug? Well, because they're getting feedback on the app that shows that there's a stopping point, right? Where people are like hitting walls. And they say, well, Apple figures it out and they say, we got to update this because we have a user interface that we want people to have speed. That's what we're selling is speed.
We got to break through that wall.
We got to break through that wall. So we need to work the bug out. So why are the brain, I don't know, I was reading about how much of our brain we actually use. It's like less than 10% of your brain.
Yeah, it's not much.
And it's way better. And we have these Palm Pilots or these iPhones, right, that are super fast, but our brains are so much more, right? And so we're doing the same thing too. Now, some people don't. Some people don't ever work the bugs out.
Well, because they don't ever rewire their brain. So they just get stuck in the mundane, the routine of it all, right? And I think that's the hack in life is to not, when I find myself doing that, I'll drive a different way to work. I'll brush my teeth with my left hand. I'll change up my workouts. I'll just change up my routine because you're rewiring your brain. And that's a healthy thing to do, I think, for growth and, getting older. Like I'm starting to get a little bit more brain fog. I just turned 50. So it's like those little things help a lot.
Well, everything, and challenging yourself, right? Because some people like to challenge yourselves, right? And that's why there's a 1% of people. And I think anymore, it's like, it used to be like the 80-20 rule, but I think it's more like a 95-5 rule of the people that just want to raise the bar. They want to throw more weight on the bar. Like me, that's one thing that it can be a hindrance too, right? When you just push yourself so hard that then you may burn out, right? Or you may hurt yourself. Like I'm 44 years old. There's no reason I should be benching, what I bench. In fact, I had a little scare. I actually got a little hurt.
From benching?
Yeah, I slightly tore my pec. But I love walking into the gym and I love putting up big weight. I love putting up big weight, but one thing that I made a mistake with is I didn't warm up. So when I was younger, I could just jump in and do it, right? But now you got to warm the engine up. It's like now I'm a diesel truck, right?
Well, and I think it's obviously a fear because you don't want to get injured. Actually, one of my guys did tear his pec off of his arm. I had to have surgery from that very thing. But I think
I got lucky.
Yeah, you did.
Because I literally listened to my body and I sensed a little bit. But so here's how it happened. So I went in, there's another real estate broker and he's a top producer in our market too. And I go into the gym, we have a great home gym, right?
So it's a competitive nature, so you guys are both...
Not necessarily. It's more me versus me,
okay.
Right? So because this guy, he's not benching what I'm benching, but he was my spot, right? So I go to the gym because I like to see people. We have this amazing home gym. Rosie and I have this just killer home gym, but I have to, you got to get me out in public. That's who I am.
Right. That's how we met.
But I mean, I like my peace and quiet too, but most of the time I like to be in the mix. So I go in, we're warming up, but it was a weak warm up, right? I just said, all right, let's get to it. And so I skipped one step in my warm up that I normally do. So I put 3 plates on the bench and I'm doing it. And I got 6 reps out of it and I'm feeling like a stud. It's Friday. I'm about to go up to my ranch. So I'm feeling just like on top of the world. And I get down to the bottom of this. I put the 6th one up and I was like, let's go for the 7th. I'm uncharted territory, okay? So I go down and I'm coming back up and I get to about 75% and I feel just a little something. And I'm like, I rack it. And he's like, man, that's awesome, man. You did it. I was like, I'm done. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, I'm done. And and that was probably about a month and a half ago. And I haven't been back to the gym since. I mean, I got, I've been doing therapy for it and I'm like really doing good now. Like,
did you have a scan done or anything like that?
I had a buddy of mine that does like PT and
he said you're
I'm
okay.
fine. Yeah. And he did, basically it was, movement. And he's like, dude, can you do a wall push-up tomorrow? I did it. I was like, I wasn't feeling any pain. Okay. He's like, dude, you're good. You caught it right in time. So it could have been just been a strain.
Yeah.
But I don't take any chances.
What was the weight?
It was 3 plates. So it's at 315. 315 7 times. That's
solid.
Yeah.
That is solid.
Yeah. And my 1 rep max of all time was 405. So
because you're supposed to be able to bench press your body weight. That's like, for health, purposes.
I'm 225. So
so much of it's functional, like just moving your body up and down. I think the challenge, or I guess not the challenge, but the concern with maybe always pushing yourself is if it's never like satisfiable. So it's like if you're like, hey, I'm going to push myself to go achieve this thing, but you're not enjoying the journey and you have to keep doing more and more things. But, to me, I think it's all about the trains to achieve it. But like if it's never quite satifying, you got to keep doing more and more.
But that's a maturity, maturity thing though, Ross. Like that was me having an insatiable, in fact, one gentleman that I mentored, and believe it or not, he doesn't know this, but he's mentored me a lot. Even though I was his mentor, he's actually mentored me in certain things, right? Because I learned things from people that I mentor. So it's a two-way street. But he paid me a compliment one time. He's like, you know what, Joey? That's what he calls me. He says, I try to figure you out. He's all, but the word that best describes you is insatiable, right? Which never satisfied, which, I thought about that word and it's like, man, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? At the time when you're building, right? I think men go through, men and women, but I can only really speak for man because I'm a man and I think I know a man's journey and I'm still doing my journey. We go through phases in our life, right? When you're young and you're learning. All right, so you got to find something and you got to learn something well, right? You get to that and you're starting, you're learning from somebody. So you have to find a mentor and you got to follow that mentor and be coached, right? And then there's a second part of your life where you're working on that skill. So you're building, you're having kids, you have your spouse, right? And then there's that part where you master it. Okay. The third part is where you mastered this skill, whatever it is, like you're at the peak. And then I think the fourth part is where you try to give that gift back. Right. But every view is different.
So is that where you're at now? Is some of where you're at in businesses? You enjoy the mentorship?
I love mentoring people, and I've loved it along the way. So I've always never had fear about teaching people, but what I know, I've always been an open book. And what I like to say is, I want people to have an abundant mentality, because when you have an abundance mentality, nobody can ever take anything away from you.
Yeah, because it's a perception, right? It's what you feel.
It's your vibe. It's who you are. It's your aura that you put off. But the second you start having, if you're wired with scarcity, and some people are, and they have to break that, that's when you'll never have. So
when it's Christ-like, I mean, whatever your religious denomination is, it's like love that. The one Jesus, love thy neighbor, right? And you just give and give and give and give and give.
Well, that's what he did. I mean, basically gave it all, right? And above him, he gave his son to give. I mean, that sacrifice is something you have to do to be successful, whether your mission in life is to go to heaven, right? So then you got to make the ultimate sacrifice, which means dying. But if you're going to win in business too, you got to sacrifice a lot, right? You got to sacrifice, you got to put things to the side that maybe are distractions, right? So now your friends are saying, hey, we're going to go, drink, party, do whatever they're going to do. You got to sacrifice that pleasure and you got to put it in. And then one day it's worth it. It's all an investment, right? So the people that put time aside and put their time in things that are going to pay off, normally, 10 years down the road, it pays off. But the people that squander their time, everybody's given the same amount of everything. Some people choose to invest their time, and some people squander their time, right?
And there's a fable on that, right? The Bible.
Well, it's a prodigal
story.
son.
Yeah,
it's a prodigal son.
So
yeah.
you can't hoard it, you can't store it. You got to invest it, and you got to pour in.
But at the same time, along with that too, Ross, is it's never too late for somebody to be successful, right? They can, they could toss it all down the drain and squander everything that they've been given. But if they really want to kick something, either it's a habit or it's, being lazy or procrastinating, free will is that you can come back.
It's like there's a Instagram meme on that. Like, it's like, Colonel Sanders and like, McDonald, like all these individuals that built their careers 50 and over, right? Because they didn't look at any of their hardships or like quote unquote failures that weren't. They were just lessons to build them to where they needed to go. It just took them longer to get there.
Well, and so that's a testament in of itself. So I mentor a lot of young people, right? And why I'm attracted to that, and sometimes I feel like I'm spinning my wheels just because some people aren't mature enough to hear what I have to tell them. But I think that one day, when the student's ready, the teacher shall appear. Then one day whether it's with me or with somebody else, I always get calls back from some of these people that I've touched. And they say, wow, now I get what you're trying to teach me. But they just weren't ready to listen. But I wanted them to learn because I wish I would have learned that at their age, right? And
they just weren't ready to listen to it. Yep.
Well, they're just chemically, as men, we're chemically so mature at a certain age, right? And then you get to a certain level and you're like, wow, that was dumb, right? So
what do you look for? Like, I like the rising stars, like the young individuals that like, what do you look for in that individual? Someone that you want to mentor or bring onto your team?
Well, you just have to, number one, go into it knowing that you may get hurt, okay? And that it's just all part of the process, that people have to learn through failure. They just have to. If somebody goes straight through, then they're going to fail at the top, and that could be fatal, right? So you have to understand that you may get your heart broken because you want it more than they do, right? And maybe so. What do I look for? I mean,
and that's don't you think that's the problem? I always say that. I'm like, when I want it more than you, then that's the issue.
Yeah, but with the servant's heart, you just can't help yourself, right? And sometimes like I would have, it's just like whenever I'd have fights with my wife or disagreements or whatever, and I'd be, I'm going to change, I'm going to do this. It's like, who am I kidding? I am who I am, right? I'm always going to revert back to exactly what my nature is. Now I could learn, some things, right? But I'm hardwired to do something, right? And that's help people, be nice to people, want to see people smile,
serve.
I want to serve people. And so that just comes with the territory. So what I've done in the past is I found myself waste some of my talents on people that maybe just hadn't earned the spot. So what I do now is I look for people that have demonstrated that they want more in life, right? So, real estate's kind of a low barrier to entry, right? So you don't have to have a college education. You don't have to have, but I'm looking for somebody that has demonstrated that. So either college educated people
or been on a job for a long
period of time.
Loyal.
Yeah. Tell me, show me somebody that has a 5-year career and now they're ready to move the comma, right? Because anybody that can make it 5 to 10 years in a profession, who's great is second career people too.
Like people getting like give me an example. Like,
I have a
bartender or like a server.
That's great. Anything really, but a bartender's awesome because they know how to read people and they're in customer service, right? They're there to brighten up somebody's day, right? If you serve them right. You could be, if you're the only bartender in the city, well, then you got everybody where you want them. So, but you have an opportunity to capitalize, right? You have an opportunity to capitalize. Like when I was a bartender in college, I'd get tipped the whole bill, and I always say, like my partner was a female and she was way better looking than I was. And she didn't get tipped as much as I did either.
But you have that servant philosophy mentality. So you don't have expectations. So you want to help people. You're not expecting something back in return.
Correct.
And you're just giving. And I think if you do that, you open up to receive, and then that's where the magic happens. But I also noticed too, when we were upstairs and we were, going to tour that office and the receptionist up there, I get the sense that you can identify talent pretty quickly, and you can identify, because immediately when she rattled off a certain script, you're like, oh yeah, okay, you've been trained, you know exactly what to say.
But that's programming, right? That's years and years of making mistakes. That's years and years of, taking the wrong path and having.
Isn't that fun though when you see stuff like that? I fall in love with certain people. Really, for me, it boils down to hard work and attitude. Like those two things for me go so far.
It's simple to you, and it's simple to me, right? But it's not necessarily, people just have to find out for themselves. And so I want to finish answering your question. So prior service military people are amazing because they've been loyalty, honor. You look at, on my dog tags, it's taped up now, but on my dog tags, I've had these since 1998. And
wow.
On there, there's, we have our Army values, loyalty, duty. There's all these Army values that you have, and you live those things, right? And you've had certain experiences that give you perspective on what I get to do today. I've done really hard things in my life, right? Helping people is not hard for me. Physical, whether it's physical, mentally exhausting type exercises, like helping somebody achieve their dreams or being the X factor is very rewarding for me, considering the environments that I've been in.
For sure.
And so I have one person in particular who's my sales manager for my real estate team right now. He's prior service APD, so he is with Albuquerque Police Department. He served his time. I mean, you want to talk about being in law enforcement in today's environment. I mean,
brutal.
So tell me, dealing with the first time home,
right.
helping a first time home buyer is not going to be rewarding to him, or
a bad home inspection,
right? Tell me that's going to hurt him, right? And so, I mean, those guys are gold nuggets, right laying on the ground right there. Now, if treated correctly, right, and if mentored correctly, they'll live great lives, right? So I see him, and I see that he gets to go to Disneyland with his family, and the way he was going to be awesome anyway. I just like to see him awesome, making a lot of money.
Having freedom.
Yeah, and having freedom. Yes, freedom, because guys like that appreciate their freedom.
And not putting their life on the line every single day.
Hey, he goes to his kids' practice. He goes to all his kids' stuff. He's there for his wife. Before, that guy would work all night, right? And they don't know if he's going to come home or not, right? So what's the perspective between the two? So,
peace of mind for the whole family.
Well, finding people that will be a credit to the profession.
We have a group. I've got the VA loan nerd part of our group, and Joey was he was a Marine, served in Iraq, retired firefighter, and just became a master of the VA loan. And so now he's built this brand across the country called the VA Loaner. But he has his team is the frontline team, so they're all police and fire that are still, most I think are still active. I think they're all still active, but he's helping them segue from that life into this life. And it's exactly what you just said in terms of like loyalty, honor. They see that when I talk to these guys, I get so excited because they are so excited to be in the industry, and they see things in such a positive light compared to what we see with maybe your traditional realtor or lender, right? Where they just are like, seeing what can't be done opposed to what's possible.
Well, and those professions, they all have credos, right? They all have certain things that they subscribe to. Like one of the other Army values is selfless service. I mean, hello, what do we do? I mean, we make great money, but there's a lot of that. You have to be cool, calm, collective. You have to be, right? Yeah. I mean, things get hot. I know, look, I sell some commercial real estate, and commercial real estate is pretty easy for me to sell because it's cut and dry. But when you're dealing with
emotions,
when you're navigating, I'm not going to say dealing, when you're helping people navigate emotions with probably one of the biggest investments of their life.
Right. It's a totally different deal.
The stakes are high.
Yeah.
And people are going to say stuff that they don't necessarily mean. But I think back to 1998 when I had a drill sergeant spitting in my face,
Yeah.
like it's no thing.
How long did you serve for?
So I did totally 8 years.
8 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
8 years you saw wartime.
Yeah, I did a 13-month tour to Iraq in
okay.
03 when we invaded. So yeah, but see, what's interesting about me, Ross, is I was like a recruiter's dream because like, both my grandfathers were World War II. My dad was a Marine in Vietnam.
It was almost predestined. Like
Yeah,
it was already a set thing.
And then there's something about, and again, like guys, you'll hear me say this on and on, is I can only speak for a man, right? But who are our heroes? Our fathers tend to be our heroes. So I wanted to fill the boot, so to speak, right? Like I looked at my father and I said, man, I want to be just like that guy right there. I want to be just like him because he's, right? And
big, grandiose, just a hero.
Just a stud, right? Just a stud, right? I look up to my dad and I say, I want to be just like that man right there. From the second, I think there's even a country song about that, And so, so I was like a recruiter's dream. I'm like the fish that jumped in the boat. Yeah. I was like, I'm old enough. Sign me up. And I think by that time, my dad was like, get the hell out of here. My dad's like, perfect timing. Take him. Humble this kid, right? Because
and it probably did.
And it did.
It's a rite of passage, right?
It was medicine that I needed to take.
You came in as a boy and you went out as a man.
And the other thing too is when you're in boot camp, I never knew what racism was because I grew up in northern New Mexico, which is mostly Hispanics, right? And but man, you figure out pretty quick that you're different when you go to. I was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and it was an all male boot camp, and man, I was getting called names that I didn't even know what they meant, but I just knew by the way the way they said it, like I'm supposed to be upset.
Well, I bet you're pretty scrappy. I
loved it. Well, that was my sport. Growing up, it's like funny. People say, "Hey, what kind of sports do you play?" I was like, "Well,
I fight."
I was in a 5-year letterman in chingazos. I just like that's what we did in small towns. Like that's what we did. And back then you could do that kind of stuff, right? Today it's frowned upon, but we were gentlemen about it, right? Yeah. Nobody was like pulling out.
There was honor to it.
Yeah, you handle it and then shake hands. And some of those guys, that I ran into, they're some of my best friends to this very day, So we'd help. If they called me up, in fact, one of the best compliment is I got a call from one of those guys, Joe, I need your expertise. Come on.
Yeah.
That's a man thing to do, right? And I'll help my people regardless. I'll run back and help anybody that needs my help. Yeah.
That's amazing. We started this a little unorthodox-ish or esque. Because normally, but we got to so much good stuff that I didn't want to stop the flow. But honestly, everything we just talked about, to me, sets the tone for this podcast, which is why Joe Maez, for the Maez Group, is the biggest real estate team in all of New Mexico. I mean, I think you probably, in terms of units, could be bigger than most teams in Arizona as well, in terms of units. We obviously have bigger loan sizes here.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of people will have their own assumptions, or they have their own thoughts around why, you do as well as you do. But the last 15, 20 minutes is exactly why you do as well as you do, because you have a servant leadership, servant heart. You want to go help people. You see things in a can-do and a helpful manner, and not like it's a chore or it's a burden or whatever. Like, you're changing lives. The money is the byproduct, right, of everything that you do.
And it is a byproduct. It just comes.
So let's talk numbers. Served in the U.S. military for 8 years. Mm-hmm. Saw wartime. Deployed to Iraq for 13 months. I'm sure that put a lot of things in perspective for you on what to appreciate in life and have value for life. You came home to Rosie, who you'd married just before leaving,
yep.
And so you were deployed for 13 months. She was home, 20 years old or something like that, trying to figure out life, but got her real estate license. And when you came back and got out of the military, you got into real estate. So let's talk about that early journey. What you get out of real estate school, like, are you thinking like, well, what do I go do with this? Am I going to go sell door to door?
Well, I always say she's responsible for all this, right? So when growing up in northern New Mexico, and I think that's what most things with people's lives is like paint by the numbers, right? Go to school, get your degree, get your degree, get a job, get engaged, then get married. So it's like 1, 2, 3, right? Well, before I got deployed, it's funny because Rosie kind of gave me an ultimatum. She's like, we've been together since I've been 16. Like, if we're not married by the time, I was like, So let's just be friends. I was like, whoa, why are you gonna do that? I
I've
said,
got the tree.
You don't understand.
I have the tree.
I got the paint by the numbers thing here. Like we haven't. I said the only way.
But the tree story too, because that was like early on.
That was
right?
awesome. Yeah, and I still haven't unloaded that one. That was a good one. You're on the inside track on that one. So I had carved our names in a tree years before.
You were like 10 or 12.
Might as well have been, right? It was like, Rosie, will you marry me? It was a tree that we had carved our names in. Well, one day I was hunting and I cut off from hunting with my cousins and I went over there and I carved Rosie, will you marry me? So that was the idea. I was going to tell,
take her to the tree.
Take her to the tree. Hey, let's go visit our tree, one day. And she'd turn around and I proposed to her. Well, we had that talk. I never got to do that.
Because you got deployed. Yeah.
Because I said, hey.
But you did take her back.
Yes, I did. Yeah. And it's a little hard to read, but I helped her, read it.
That's so cool.
So the whole thing is life doesn't always work out the way you want it to work out, but it's good. It's fine. I wouldn't change anything about it. Was I a little bit, do you get upset that things didn't happen exactly the way you wanted it to? That's fine, but the plan is the plan. And we don't write the plan. All we can do is just try to do the best we can. So she had been looking for houses because that's what you do when you're married is you look for houses. And along the way, she's like, you know what? You'd be a great real estate agent. And I was like, well, what's a real estate agent? And she said, well, they help people find houses. So I grew up like guiding people fishing and I've always a hunter.
You've always been a leader, I'm sure.
I have, sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not always the best because you were young and you did some dumb things. We all did dumb things.
It was all part of the, but I have been a leader nonetheless. And so even in the military, I was a leader and we don't have enough time to talk about that. But when I got back, she set us up with a career night with one of the more respectable companies in Albuquerque. This is like the premier company to get your license with. And we had great mentors there and they sold us on getting our real estate license and getting real estate. But one thing that was a little scary, Ross, was it was 100% commission paid. Well, where I grew up with our limiting beliefs where I've grown up in it, and believe me, you go back to where I'm from and things have not changed. In fact, maybe they've regressed.
Really?
And so
you didn't see abundance. You didn't grow up seeing wealth and abundance.
No, I had it. I wasn't impoverished by any means, but I was surrounded by, people that were, they just, there was where I went to school, they had free breakfast and free lunch. And some of those families, like those kids, if they didn't eat breakfast and lunch at school, they might not eat. Okay. So I never realized it when I was a kid. Now looking back, I was like, wow, my parents were both employed and I never needed anything. I had everything I needed. Not everything I wanted, everything I needed. I had good providing parents. So I can't say,
sure.
I didn't struggle.
Right.
And not only that, but I was happy.
I was similar. We weren't poor. We didn't have money, but we had what we needed.
Yes. Like, I don't feel like I struggled, In fact, I'm learning a lot more about myself as I get older. So, but that 100% commission paid was so, and that's why when some people try to get in real estate and their parents are like, oh, be careful. They're trying to, it's not because they're just worried for you, right? They want you to be okay. They want you to be comfortable. So a lot of people just don't understand it. And I was one of them. But this company did a really good job on selling me, but still I had that limiting belief. So there was an ad in at the college and Pulte was hiring
young
college grads. You had, and they had a salary and I'm like, great, a safety net.
So you went to college. You got
I got my business degree.
Okay.
I got my business degree in operations management, and I was trying to get a degree in entrepreneurial studies, but I ended up getting the operational management degree, which come to find out I'm pretty good with operations as it stands. That's what I do. But they advertised the salary, so there was that safety net for me. The thing that we all looked forward to is that salary. Okay. Well, it turns out it was kind of like a bait and switch. It was really a draw.
Right. Guaranteed.
But guess what, man? I'm so happy they did that to me because I would have never signed up for it. So I was like, all right, honey, we'll both get our real estate licenses. You can go to this company that we believe in, and we still believe in to this very day. And I'm going to go this route. So we had bought a house with no job.
After
when I came back from Iraq, I had
$60,000
because when I was in Iraq, there was no place to spend it.
Right. So you
right?
just saved. You just
We
banked
just
it.
saved. And I was able to buy a house. Remember the NINA program, no income, no
Yeah.
assets?
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh, so you didn't even use your VA.
nope. I still have not used my VA to this very day.
Well, that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
And
We'll reschedule that.
And Joey Matthews, I think if he was in this room, he would fall over. Huh, Corey? He'd be like, "What?"
Never had to, but I'm saving that for a rainy day, right? It's
There's
like,
no limit. You can buy any.
Right?
You can
And
go
so-
buy a $5 million house with a VA loan.
believe me, it's it's a possibility, but
Yeah.
it's like my little like falling star that I have in my pocket.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of saving it. But
So what year is this? You come back and get a job at Pulte.
2004, late 2004, 2005.
Okay.
And
So how many years did you spend in new home construction?
7.
And how many homes do you think you sold per year on average?
On average, probably about 100 homes a year.
100 homes a year. So
Yeah.
that's a lot. If you actually equate that to what an average agent does per year, let's say your top producing agents in Albuquerque, they probably close 30 to 40 deals a year.
Well, I was closing $48 million
In
in
2000.
2005, 2006, 2000. I mean, these are big numbers, but I didn't know any better. Like I just was doing what I wanted to do, right? And
Right.
so, but I had good mentors. I had a really good mentor, and he put it out there. His name was Brian Fink. I had 2 good mentors, and a gentleman named Jimmy McClurg out of Colorado. And I just gleaned stuff from them, right?
And they were new home sales
they're
mentors
new home sales mentors,
that
right?
work for Pulte as well.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah, and so, Brian was our VP of sales, and he would always say, "Hey, come meet me at 5 a.m. at the office."
You're like, okay.
He opened it up to everybody and says, "Come meet me. We'll do sales training at 5 a.m. at the office." Guess who was the only one that showed up?
That's
Because I looked at this guy. But Brian and I are different. We're a different animal. But I learned a lot of great things from him. Right? That guy can sell anything.
well, that's why we're interviewing you and not the people that were in that other office, because they probably didn't
They're-
do a whole lot after that.
Believe it or not, some of them have decent lives just because they've learned some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as taking it to the next level, there's, like I said, 95.5. Maybe, if you're going to go to a certain level, maybe it's even different than that. Maybe it's 99.1. Right?
I have a lot of good friends that are new home sales because I've worked with builders for so many years, like Horton, Starlight, Stewart Homes. And it can be tough to transition from new home construction to resale, even though optically for me, when I see a top salesperson, like if I would have saw you back then at Pulte, I would have been like, oh, Joe would crush it in resale. And I've got a friend like that now, but it took him the better part of probably, I mean, he's done it for the last 10 years. He took a break and then did it like 4 years before that. But the last probably 2 or 3 when things weren't going as good, and I'm like, was trying to get him prepped up to go into resale. And he finally did. I don't think he's looked back. He's doing incredibly well. But what was it for you at Pulte that you're like, I'm doing this. I'm going to jump?
Well, this was a time when, I kind of walked on. I earned my spot, okay? But a lot of people, like I've always had this different mindset. And like one of my mentees told me that I'm insatiable, right? And so Rosie was doing the resale side, and she's doing great on the resale side. I'd send her referrals, right, that needed to sell a home in order to buy. So we had it kind of cornered. We had a good thing going.
Contingent deal or something.
Mm-hmm. But around that time, that's when we started having kids. We started having kids, and I didn't want her to be, there's nothing more valuable. And, if you ever meet my kids, I mean, you'll see how awesome they are.
I'd love to.
And a huge testament of that is their mother, because their mother was able to spend, Rosie's able to spend good quality time with them.
Motivation was flexibility for the two of you, for the family.
So there's flexibility, and that was part of it. And then, I don't want Rosie working like that, right? Because and she's taught me a lot about how to properly parent kids, right? Just because she's got a psychology background degree, right? So she really studies human nature a lot. So I'm probably like a case study for her, right? And so I think she's fascinated with me, right? And so, but also things changed. So a lot of my leadership was getting laid off because this was like 2007, 2008. And I'm still selling houses like crazy, but I'm seeing all the mentors, like Brian got laid off. He got let go. My division president had just finished laying everybody off. And then the regional president came and laid him off.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I've just seen like big corporations having to make these really tough decisions. I mean, guys yelling in the lobby like they're going to come back and kill somebody because now their whole livelihood has just been pulled out from under them. Well, then a lady came to visit me from Arizona. Now I'm this guy that's basically accounting for 70% of the division sales.
Wow.
Right? So I'm in kind of an interesting position, but I see all these brokers on the outside, call it the outside, right, that are complaining about the market. Meanwhile, my universe is I can only sell 100 homes a year.
Right. You can only sell what you have.
I can only sell what I got.
And you can only sell
by the way,
Pulte.
they're not building anymore, but I can only sell Pulte. Okay, so, and I'm doing open houses for a living, Ross. Right? So
you're a pro.
I'm a pro. And so the way I look at Pulte, and I will say I have nothing but amazing things to say about Pulte, because the way I look at Pulte is, so I'd say UNM was my bachelor's degree, like my undergrad. And, you know, the war in Iraq, my combat deployment was like my second major, right? And then I feel like Pulte was my...
Like PhD?
That was my master's degree, and it was from Wharton.
Okay,
because Pulte is not like, there's D.R. Horton, there's Richmond American, there's all these national builders, but Pulte is the Wharton of business school. Why? Because they teach you about segmentation, how to study communities and your buyer profiles, right? They know how to market. Demographics, dude. It was huge. Development. Your average salesperson with Pulte is not your average salesperson. They know the construction. They know the warranty.
Interesting.
They're trained to be experts in everything, almost like a special ops person, right?
So they heavily invested in you and your career.
Yeah. And I was in the emerging leader program with Pulte, and I remember one time I was in Chicago, and I'd go out for runs in the morning. It was like 4 a.m. I remember I went to this thing, and I come down to go for a run, and right across the street, this guy's getting into his Ferrari and a fur coat. And it was
Grant Cardone? Donald
Michael
Trump?
Jordan.
Oh, Jordan. Okay.
It was just me and him on the road, but that was at a Pulte event, right?
Wow.
But that's kind of just things like that have happened to me, and we both saw each other on the road, and I gave him like the New Mexico, like, what's up? And he like acknowledged and just drove off. But like, crazy things like that.
Wow.
But Pulte exposed me to so much, and I'm very grateful for that. So I bring that to the resale side.
Right.
So there was a
Which
lady.
Which is a huge impact in your career.
It's huge, right? Yeah. So the catalyst was, I'd always been talking about leaving, kind of felt like a caged lion, so to speak. And then one day, a lady, an operations lady, she was kind of like our acting division president. She came to town and she rattled my cage. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. In fact, I still send this lady, happy birthday. I mean, she was just doing her job. Yeah. But she came and she rattled my cage, and
it was basically like a fight or flight.
It was like one of those things. She's like, hey, this next year, so you're Joe Maez. And I said, yeah. She's like, here you get whatever you want around here. And I'm like, at that point in time, like, I was a hardcore sales guy, like kind of one of those Glengarry, Glen Ross, like boiler room type of sales guys. So it's like, dude, hardened. And like, I was like, lady, like, I'm the only one keeping people's jobs around here, right? So I had like that arrogance about me. And
which was true.
Well, which it was, but there was like, I went from being a humble soldier coming back, and then I grew into this, like, it's like when somebody gives you powers and you abuse them, right? So I like really wasn't, the environment was really something different. But the company's great. I have nothing bad to say, but this lady came in and her job was to rattle my cage, and she did. But she also did me a favor. She said, well, you're Joe. I hear you get whatever you want around here. And I was like, she's like, well, starting next year, we're going to, cut your commission in half. And the reason we're going to do that is because we know that you like to make money, and you'll just sell more homes to make the same amount of money, like cold-blooded. Mm-hmm. But you know what? She did me a huge favor, right? Because at that point, I came home that night. I told Rosie, I said, we're doing this. And we did it, right? And, a few months later, she was out of the picture. And
Rosie had your back. She was like,
oh, yeah. No, this is the funny part is, and this is kind of, Rosie, if you talk to Rosie, this is the theme of Rosie's life.
Because you were making probably bank at the time.
I was making over $500,000 a year, and we had like no expenses, like, it was W-2'd, but that's a whole separate, but it's still like,
well, the median income was probably like $60,000 a year for the household.
Not even.
Yeah.
Not even. I'm living good, right? We're living good. She's still selling real estate. We're compounding that. So, but one day we're at a company picnic, and, we had talked about it, but we hadn't made a decision, and we're at a company picnic, and the current division president, I see him walk up to his office to like take a break from the picnic. And I just followed him. I said, I'm doing this.
That's
And
when
I
you
went
didn't
up
notice.
I went up to his office and I said, "Hey, you got a minute?" And he's like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And him and I got along really well. And he's awesome dude. And I said, "I've never done this before." He's like, "What's that?" I said, "I'm giving you guys my 2 weeks." And the guy about fell out of his chair, right? Because here you got the guy that's selling, everything. And I said, "Look, it's not you. It's not the company. I just hear, other real estate agents. I got to prove something to myself, right? And because there's always all these realtors that were in resale, and they're like, Joe, you got it made. People just come to you." And I'm like, dude, you got it made. You have 6,000 homes to sell. I have a universe of 100 houses. By the way, I have to, for lack of better terms, keep reselling the house and babysit people because I'm taking them from contract to slab to, and there's so many things that they're going to discover
Time
every
kills
weekend.
all deals.
Every weekend that they come. So 6 months I'm selling this house. You guys are closing a deal in 30 days, right? I know how to sell.
And you're not capped. If someone comes in and doesn't want a Pulte, you can go sell them a Horton.
Or
You
if
can sell
they,
them whatever they want.
and that was in the day of foreclosure. So if somebody came in, like, seriously, Ross, and that's the other thing too about fulfillment too, is like a lot of these people, and I was really good. I'm selling them a house and they're upside down $80,000 from the second they closed. Right. And I still see those people in Costco or wherever, and they love me. Right. Of course, those,
They're still
values have rebounded,
yeah.
but I sold them a house
And
that
it
they
took a
love,
long time.
but still, like, it was really tough for me because I'm like heavily investment oriented. So like the fact that these people were closing, they're already upside down 70, $80,000, like that took a piece out of me, man.
It's heartbreaking.
And so now when I did this and I go out and Rosie helps me set up this stuff, and we get after it together, and then we started having kids, right? So she was able to now she was like ops manager for our family, right? So she still had, it wasn't like, so then I went into it and just went to the company that introduced us to real estate, and the first year, number 4 in their entire company out of 500 and some odd brokers.
So what year is that?
That was 2010.
2010.
11,
so
yeah.
You'd been with Pulte 6-7 years roughly.
Mm-hmm.
You resign, go right into resale. First year, you're number 4 or 5. How many units is that first year?
I think I want to say it was. I have to look back. I think it was 120 units.
Do you think a lot of that was driven by? Obviously, there's always some fear, right? Fear is a huge motivator, but I don't think that people resonate. Like people like you and I don't resonate towards fear, but it's also like I'm not going to fail. This is going to happen. I'm going to make it happen.
Well,
but did you come into it just like fired up and excited? Like,
well, I gotta take a step back because you asked me, so I quit my job that day. I come home and I tell my wife when I get home, I said, I quit my job today, and she's pregnant. And, anybody else would have freaked out, but she says, you know what you're doing. She's like, you just take care of business. Like, didn't even skip a step, didn't have any emotion about it. So that's part of the reason why I never had a whole lot of fear. And because I've had that great partner that has my back, and like my cheerleader that tells me I can. When she sees I'm down, she identifies that I'm down and she picks me up. Like, you got coaches that give locker room speeches. Like if you could see some of her locker room speeches when she identifies that I'm, got the wind knocked out of me, that, she just knows.
Well, they're starting to show studies on this that like when two people, like a couple, can manifest and vision together, you like 10x it, right? Because you instead of having to fight your spouse on like what your vision is, they buy in on each other's vision, right? And you can achieve that. You have such a greater success rate doing that.
Well, I'd like to have her on a podcast one day because she could really tell you how it goes, right? And so
let's do it.
It's called growth. It's called growth. I'm a different man than I was, 10 years ago, and I'm a different man than I was 20 years ago. But
that's the name of the podcast is Growing with Generosity.
Really? Well,
I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
That's my handle is Generosity. But Growing with Generosity.
Hey, good content, right?
Yeah.
So I guess what I would say about that, Ross, is we haven't always seen eye to eye, but we've grown to see eye to eye. And I look at, and we complement each other. And I look at a lot of folks right now that maybe don't have that partner in their life, right? Because I haven't made it easy on her, and she hasn't made it easy on me in certain situations, but we figure it out. Okay. And that's the beauty of life. And that's the way a real estate transaction is done is like, there's going to be, a short appraisal.
There's
What do you
bumps.
do? Would you just cancel the contract
There's
or do you
hurdles.
fix it out? So I look at people that have long-term marriages. I was like, look, you only like, if you're looking at my Facebook, you're seeing the highlights, bro. I'm not showing you, like the down, the doom and gloom of stuff, right? Like it's not always, but it is perfect, right? There's those, it's not perfect, but it is perfect. And I feel he who solves those problems lasts, right? And so, going back to, I see guys that maybe they haven't figured it out, or maybe people are just throwing in the towel, something bad happens, or they're in this relationship to that relationship. Like that's a distraction in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have somebody, she has me, right, that provides something, and then I have her that provides something. It's like, and we're complete opposites. Like I'm the dude that walks in and I have to know everybody, and she's the person that doesn't want to know anybody. She just wants to know me, right? So, or she's just watching out for me to make sure that I'm not getting taken advantage of. And
I think every successful individual needs a board of directors, on their,
right.
whether it's, their business, but like, you could, spouse is a board of director, or maybe it's the CEO or the chairman. You've got a best friend, but you got to have good counsel. You got to have people around you that can pick you up on the hard times and celebrate your wins, right? And what happens sometimes in our industry is when you become successful, sometimes the people that you're close to don't celebrate. They get jealous of your wins and they get envious of your wins, and then they try to peck at you or take you down a peg. And then you realize, hey, I think I've got the wrong board of directors.
And that's where you either make a change, right? Right? Or you just suffer, life is too short to be miserable, right? But it takes two, and you got to try, you got to figure it out. There's got to be, hard conversations. And one reason our relationship has done what it's done is I've been able to see what my flaws are too. Like take a step back and say,
be self-aware. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's easy to say it's me. But when you take a step back and you say, wow, like that was selfish of me, or I haven't listened, right?
Right.
That's called being mature. So when I mentor young men or men, like they can even be men that aren't young but still haven't matured, mm-hmm. Okay? I like to offer more than real estate mentorship. It's life mentorship that says, hey, dude, and then it's funny how
most adults have the emotional intelligence of like a 12-year-old. Like the majority of the adult population in our society has a very low emotional intelligence because they just don't they can't grow from it. It's something that you have to, I think we mature in some ways, but like that part of the emotions where like you're reactionary or you're over, and most problems aren't that, but you have to learn to like, I do it myself. Oh yeah.
Take a step back and look at it. You got to put yourself. And one thing I've learned, it wasn't always that way, was I've been conditioned now to take a step back and put myself in the customer's shoes, right? How are they feeling? Not how am I feeling? Because yeah, you may have just punched me right in the face figuratively with your words, and my first inclination, which I'm not that guy, but I found myself that I was a lot more patient with customers than I was with my own family. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like these guys, and then I'd come home and I'd bring it to my house, right? Like,
yeah,
and I bring it. So now just being self-aware, and they don't teach this stuff in schools. I'm a product of learning things the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and even a mentor sometimes doesn't teach you that stuff. Sometimes the stuff you have to seek it out on your own.
Well, look at these kids. They come out of school. They don't know how to manage money. And, even me, like I've matured a lot. My accounting principle is just make a whole lot of money. Mm-hmm. And then you don't have to worry about how much you're spending. I mean, that's right. That's a Joe Maez accounting principle, mm-hmm. right? But, at some point in time, you got to take a step back. And, I'm heavy right brain, naturally heavy right brain. But, the me now, I mean, that left brain has been hitting the gym, yeah. Right? Like I'm looking and analyzing stuff. Whereas first it was like, let's jump off this cliff and I'll build a parachute on the way down. And I did it really good. But now I'm at a point in my life where it's like, let's get the best damn parachute. Let's get the best parachute because I'm going to jump off this. Or if I decide to jump off this cliff, I want that parachute. In fact, maybe I'll have two just in case.
Back up.
The other one doesn't.
First year, 100-ish deals, fifth in the company. I want to pivot because I want to talk about like that, we're 14, 15 years later. You are closing in the 400 units a year range and growing. Yeah. You can't do that without, I think, a strong process and a strong team, which involves a lot of leadership. Like that's a bit of a loaded question. So like, talk to me about like your process that was a game changer. Because what I've learned with building a team myself, I got my own opinions, but we can only do so much in a working hour. And I believe that whatever somebody can do at 80% at my level is okay. And then I'll stick to that top 20% level so that I can leverage my time and people. But you can't expect people to come out. Like it takes 5 years to get somebody to mastery. So there's a lot of patience, a lot of coaching. But like you've blown up this business. Like you're the biggest producer I've ever had on this podcast. And then I probably know personally that does the amount of volume that you do. That's no easy feat. But at the same time, I think that you figured out an incredible process. So I want to talk about what your process is.
I want to emphasize the fact that the Maez Group itself is 6 producing brokers.
Okay.
Doing at one time, I think the most units we closed in a year was like 454 units for $162 million in closed volume.
That's amazing.
And myself, just in my career, have closed over 5,000 transaction sites for over $1 billion of volume.
It's amazing.
And it just seems like yesterday that I started doing this, but the answer to your question is being able to, number one, realize that you can't do it all yourself, right? Because I see some people, and the individual agent's dead.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you have the honor team or you have a
you
team?
can be an individual agent because the only reason you're going to be an individual agent is this, and this is hard to say, but you're cheap and you don't trust people. And that's hard to, and then not only that, but you're a disservice to the customer because you're going head to head with me. So what kind of service and value are you providing to your consumer? Because now you got a guy like me that has 3 licensed admin that do paperwork. I'm not doing paperwork.
Right.
And they do paperwork way better than I do, right? These are the detail people. And my brokers, their job is so now we're at eight brokers. Their job is to get out there and do open houses because I'm a product of open houses, right? So we believe heavily in open houses because especially today.
You're a pro. I mean,
I'm an open house pro. Yeah. That's what I am. And so I teach my brokers how to do that. So we do open houses every weekend. We do open houses during the week, right? And I train these brokers how to do a world-class open house. And of course, we have web leads and things like that. And that's just icing on the cake. But our meat and potatoes is open houses because that's our specialty.
That's amazing.
Right? And in today's world of AI and, AI bots, texting people, you don't ever know if you're when you get somebody at an open house, especially with today's real estate environment where you can't go see a house unless you have a signed buyer broker agreement.
Right.
Open houses are even more exciting than ever before. Right. So my team, the way it looks, it's very efficient. I think, going forward, I'll probably be hiring more brokers to leverage the system.
So you have 6 producing brokers on your team.
ABs, associate
You've got
brokers.
2 or 3 licensed
admin. Yep.
You have 2 TCs.
I have 2 virtual assistants out of the Philippines. Yep.
Rosie instrumental on the team.
She does all kind of the HR, keeps us legal, legit, right?
So the team's about 12
all in all.
total?
When we have our sign guy, we call him the sign. That's his
full-time job.
That's his title. Yeah, full-time job. I see agents putting up signs grinding, and I'm like, dude, you're messing up your Louboutins. Don't do that stuff. But I always tell my people when I'm listing the house, if you go outside, you see your sign tilted because of the wind, don't do anything about it. We got a guy that literally has a full-time job to make sure that your sign is legit.
Do your admins do your marketing, or who does marketing for you?
Well, we have an outside
agency
that does our marketing, our website, and runs our Instagram and Facebook ads and things like that. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And you spend money on leads.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I do. Yeah, because we spend money on leads because we want to provide opportunities for our customers. But at the same time, when I'm spending that same money, it's also enhancing our listings because we're a listing heavy I'm the listing agent.
Yeah, you're able to
So
represent a lot of.
we're able to go into and talk to a listing customer and say, you get the number one listing agent that's out there, and oh, by the way, you get all this spend money that we're spending to enhance your listing
and get some buyers. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know any successful agent out there that's not spending money on some sort of. You almost have to.
Well, why wouldn't you though? Why wouldn't you?
Right.
Your agents are there, especially my brokers. I mean, they're there to learn from me, but they're also there to get opportunities from me too, right?
Client events. Do you guys do any kind of client events?
We do an annual customer appreciation party. We've been doing that for a while. We also have a suite at the pit, the iconic pit.
Yeah.
So we have a suite up there. I mean, not even national companies have a suite, right? But we get 22 tickets per game with parking passes.
That's cool.
Now we have the Albuquerque Isotopes. That's our big attraction. So we have first baseline seats right there for customers. We have two hot air balloons.
Okay.
So
that's client. You leverage that for client events, and
we leverage that for client events. So maybe there's a balloon glow, right? We'll do that. But we also sponsor balloon fiestas. So we have the VIP tent where our customers can come in and enjoy the VIP. I mean, it's an experience. Okay?
Yeah, it's kind of like a party and experience.
Yeah, it's an experience more than anything, and that's what we strive for: is to provide people with a first class experience, right? Because they're not going to get. So we just talked about having that individual agent that's probably not spending any money on marketing. Right. They may have all the experience. Maybe they have 20, 30 years of experience, but they're playing the harmonica, they're beating the drum, they got the cymbal, they're doing all this stuff, and they're marching, and they're answering the call, they're sending a fax, they're negotiating. Like, somebody has to make a prioritization call. Like here's this house that, they have let's just say they have 2 listings, let alone 48 listings. And they get a call from a buyer that wants to see $1 million property and a buyer that wants to see a $250,000 property. Who goes to the top of the list, like just from human nature, versus here, like you can list a $2 million home with the Maez Group, or you can list a $5,000 piece of dirt, and you're going to get the same amount of marketing.
So if a new agent was listening, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, right. I mean, seek out a good team, right? Find a good team, interview a couple, someone who will mentor and coach you.
Well, Ross, I would say to a new agent, it's like, what do you want your future to look like? It's just like, what do you want your 401k to look like? In order to have a nice 401k, there's got to be some deferrals, right? From your check. If you don't want to have a nice 401k, so, how do you build a house? Like, do you want a strong foundation, or do you want to start with the roof first? I mean, I don't know. Like,
I totally agree. I think you should be on a team to be mentored, and then you can become the team. If you start growing through the ranks, you can grow. And I want to segue to that, because I think that in the years I've been in mortgage and working with realtors, a majority of my businesses come from real estate agents. I work a lot with builders, but it's always been majority of real estate agents. A lot of my more successful agent teams have not figured out that next level, right? So they'll start somebody at new agent, they'll put them through the training program. That individual starts to succeed and do very, very, very well. And then they need you less, right? Because they're doing things on their own, right? But they still need a team, but not like they did when they first started. And I haven't seen a lot of teams figure out that second phase or that third phase. And I know you and I have talked about it, and you've figured that piece out. You're like, you can graduate to these other programs so that you never really have to leave the Maez team. Correct.
So I've learned the hard way, right? But it's good. I've been with national companies, and, one way I've gotten burned is where national companies try to recruit my agents away from me. And that's fine. They got to hit their numbers. They got to have their profitability. But it was kind of dirty, and it is what it is. But again, Humpty Dumpty needed to be pushed off the wall. So the Maez Group doesn't have anybody else's. They're not powered by this brokerage out. It's the Maez Group. Okay, awesome. So it's a standalone.
You're independent.
It's independent, but our brand is synonymous with all the big boys. In fact, maybe a little bit more prestigious, right? And so when people look at it, they respect it. And in fact, there's some challenges that we have to overcome, right? Because I saw a lot of high-end real estate. And, in fact, I was at a listing agent yesterday before I came out here. And, the guy I'm interviewing for the listing, and the guy says, well, I got to ask you a question. It's hard to answer this question, but I've followed you for 6 years, and this guy's got a $775,000 house that I could probably sell in a week. Okay.
That's awesome.
And the guy says, and I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but he's like, I noticed the houses that you sell. He's like, is this house even worth your time?
So your marketing was off a little bit. You were showing the too high end of marketing.
Well, he's followed me.
Yeah.
But guess what he's looking at? Now the guy's buying a $1.2 million house. So what's he shopping for? So he sees that I'm in that space. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he's got a 7 only.
So
which
was he
is
seeing
funny
your
to me.
marketing and thinking that you only handled high end?
He's seen me at the open houses.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So he's been visiting. That's how I met him.
So he thought 775 was below your what you
he's
represent.
like, would you even take us? And then I pulled up my pending list because we have like 52 properties in pending right now. I was like,
that's amazing.
Let me show you this, Edwin. Right, that was his name, and I pull up my iPad and I type in on the MLS. I put Joe pending because I have a safe search, and it starts from $2 million all the way down to $175,000 in pending. And I'm flicking. I said, these are all the houses that I have that'll close within the next 30 to 60 days. And I start from the top and I go to the bottom. I said, does that answer your question? He's all, we're good.
That's awesome.
But see, so I have to combat that because I don't know how many people aren't calling the Maez Group because they feel like.
So you got to have your social media, make sure that you highlight the condos and the first-time homebuyer.
Well, we do, but it's funny how people's eyes are just drawn towards.
Yeah.
Because if you follow my social media, it says another one. I'm always saying we close this one, we put this one under the contract. And they're not all houses over $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, they're everything. They're even vacant pieces of dirt, right? But people's eyes are drawn to this. So the branding is luxury.
Yeah.
So people view us as
just high end.
We're high. Well, we're the top of the spear, but at the same time, we have so many people we can help. We're not above anything. Right?
Years ago, I learned this the hard way. I had a family member that I helped purchase a new home, did their mortgage. And was at a family event or something like that, and found out they refinanced with another lender. And so I was like, well, why didn't you call me? And they're like, well, I didn't even know. I didn't know you did refinances. And I was like, okay. So now when I talk to people, I'm like, we help first-time home buyers, we help investors, second home buyers, luxury, self-employed, bank statement programs, refinances. I literally go through so that they can.
You're doing it right now, Ross.
All the people.
You're doing it right now.
Exactly.
But see, that's how you have to learn, right? Because it's not that they don't. It's not their fault.
No,
it's your fault,
right?
And it's my fault, right? And so we got to figure out because my consumer is a doctor. Just because somebody is a doctor doesn't mean they know my business.
It's also an MFA first-time home buyer that needs down payment assistance.
It could be a nurse. What a nurse does? A nurse does. They don't know real estate. You and I know real estate inside and out. We know mortgages. We know all that stuff. These guys do what they do for a living. So you got to meet them where they're at and tell them, right?
Right.
And so it was good. Like to me, I saw that and I was like, wow, that's a flare that just popped up that I got to figure out how to brand to people that, and I always say big or small, we sell them all. Yeah. That's what like one of my taglines that I like to say, big or small, we sell them all. And I like to put it out there, but I don't know, my mind is, turning on that because there's so many people that need our help. Mm-hmm.
And we talked, so we kind of, because we first got on this discussion about having a higher or like a different milestone that your agents can go through, right? They can come to you brand new. They're a retired policeman, a bartender, whatever. You're going to teach them the business, but you offer different levels and different, divisions, I guess.
So one thing I like to say is, some agents will come to me and, the first thing they say to me is, what's your splits? And that's when I realize they're probably not for me, right? And then I'll get agents that come and say, I'll work for nothing. I just want to be around you. And I'm like, this is the guy, right? So the Maez Group is, I have my cadre. So I have Anthony, I have, Leona, I have, Leon, I have these are the core group, right? And they take part in mentoring newer Maez Group agents. So this is kind of like boot camp, okay? I was like saying, you're going to Harvard and getting paid, okay? So they come in, I said, give me your time. So do 30 transactions in the Maez Group. Now the splits per industry standards, they're the same as new homes. It's the same thing I got paid when I was in new homes, but by resale standards, they're low. But what people don't understand is when I first got into resale, nobody would teach me how to write a purchase agreement. There was this old man, somebody that I really respect, that said, "Come here, Jojo. I had to write up this deal. Nobody was going to show me how to do it." And he pulled me into his office and he lit my fire. He's like, "This is how you do it." All I needed was somebody to show me how. Here, with the Maez Group, you're going to learn how to list. You're going to watch my listing presentation. You're probably going to shadow me on a buyer's appointment. You could read all the books you want, Ross.
It's like
Go
an
and read 'em.
undergrad. It's like
It's a residency, buddy.
Yeah.
Like you're going to watch me perform surgery. It's a journeyman electrician. You don't just let people go out there and they're like, "Oh, I want to start, working on electrical." Right? Like you got to watch.
Hands-on.
It's hands-on and
Interactive.
Yes, watch all the YouTube videos you want, do all that stuff. But until you've done it for real, and you've had your hands on the heart, then it doesn't mean anything to me. So I always tell people, give me 30 transactions.
Okay.
Because by 30 transactions, but then agents will come in, they're like, "Oh, I want this, this, this." I was like, "Dude, you're not even out of spring training and you want to play for the Yankees."
And that's the Maez Group.
That's Maez Group.
Okay.
So then you get people, I have my solid core people that love the Maez Group. These are people that say, "Hey, there's no overhead with the Maez Group. Joe handles all the expenses. I don't have to pay for business cards, open house signs. All I got to give Joe is my time and my effort." Okay. But then you'll get people that are ambitious, which is great, right? You're going to have people like where I was at in the past, where they went to my agents and said, "Hey, if you leave Joe's team, we'll give you 100%. That was hard because I helped grow this company big, and then they went and did that to me. But hey, it was the best thing that ever happened, and it let me know that if I'm going to be in this in the long term, I have to have a vehicle to house those folks that I've poured in hundreds of hours of mentorship, maybe years. Okay, and I want to be in business with those people. But as you know, in real estate, emotions run high. So when you put that much blood, sweat, and tears into somebody and they leave, it's like a stab in the back. Yeah. It's like, oh, and now I'm numb to it. Like it's human nature. It's like, whatever. Right. You got to do what you got to do. But I've also figured out a vehicle to harness those people because yes, maybe they're not calling me 5 times a day asking me about this or that, or they're not calling my ops manager.
They're a little bit more independent.
They're very independent because they've seen a lot. 30 transactions with the Maez Group because, oh, by the way, every Wednesday we're in a backlog meeting. So you're getting to see everybody else's transactions. So you're learning, you're in the surgery room and I'm in there as a doc with all my PAs, my physician assistants saying, "Do this, do this, do this, do this." They're coming to me like, "What do I do?" And I'm telling them. So through osmosis, they're getting uploaded with all this data, right? So that's the cool part there. So now when they go into this other brokerage that I'm also the QB of, so that's valuable. It's called AI, which stands for All In.
Okay.
And that's just a cool name in of itself because I think in real estate, you have to be all in, And so
there's a podcast called The All In. It's pretty good.
Really?
It's really good.
All right. So this All In is a place to get the people that have proven they've earned the right to be there, right? So now they don't need as much supervision. They know how to manage a transaction from start to finish.
Tapping into some of your resources.
They've built their SOI, but they still do have access to my CRM. They can host my listings open because I have a lot of great listings.
They can generate leads off of your business.
100%. And they're affiliated with me, which is great. And they've been trained by me. So they get a certification. They've been trained by me. I think that's awesome because they're not going to get that anywhere else. There's a lot of professors in colleges that have never owned a business.
And they're teaching business school.
And they're teaching business school. And they don't even know how to run a vending machine, for God's sakes.
Right.
But here they've just went to the best school. They made a sacrifice they made a monetary sacrifice to do those transactions. And now, but their foundation, their roots are in the water.
They earn their PhD to go into being a doctor first year.
For sure.
So that's AI. And then there's a third level.
So there's a third level, and the third level is it's not we're not members of the board. So for those of you that are in real estate, you know what being a member of the board is. This is separate from the board, but you do have a real estate license. It's just held with this brokerage. Okay. So it's not a member of the board, and it's called OP, which stands for on purpose. So who am I wanting to attract to on purpose? Well, maybe there's an agent that came to the Maez Group and they said, "Hey, man, I see the way Joe lives. The guy can barely speak English, and he's making a great living, right? It looks easy." And they get their real estate license and they come in, and then they realize, damn, this is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But they work so hard to get their real estate license, right? Or maybe they work so hard to get that real estate license, but so they should make money with it,
Right.
whether it's in the form of referrals. So it's a referral company.
I love it.
And then, or maybe there's an agent that's worked with me, but now they got a job transfer out of state. But they still have a Facebook and an Instagram, and people still associate them in real estate. They can give me a name.
There's a lot of folks like that. They're a high I on the disc profile, which is influential. They could be a bartender, someone that interacts with people all the time, and they are just great at making connections and saying, "Hey, let me refer this," but they don't actually want to be in the real estate.
So that's the other one too, is going after influencers in our market and being an op for OP, right? Like an undercover, like somebody. But the neat thing about them is they can feel good knowing that that business comes directly to me. So they're basically going to say they're bartending, they're pouring this guy his beer, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I got to sell my house."
I'm like, I can help you out.
I can introduce you to the number one guy in town. Really? Yeah. Here's his number right now. In fact, I'm going to put us on a group text. Done.
I think that's genius. So you really have. I always thought that was the biggest challenge, is that the team lead that owned their real estate team didn't come up with a second gear or a second chapter for those top agents that you put years and time and effort into, and they feel like their only option is just to leave because you don't offer an option to them, right?
Or you can't house them. You just can't. I mean, you want to, but you can't. From a profitability standpoint, you just can't do it.
With AI, problem solved.
Yeah.
And then people that get in that maybe they're just not quite cut out for it, or other challenges, but they still have an opportunity to generate some real estate leads. That's on purpose. OP,
yeah.
Oh, I love it. That's amazing. I mean, that's the forward thinking. And we talked about this earlier just after lunch about AI, that, AI is going to start, we're going to start seeing it incorporate a lot more in all business, every business out there. At the end of the day, I personally believe that people want to work with people, but that if we can optimize and maximize our business with technology like AI to do some of the work that we don't necessarily have time to do, it's just going to make us more efficient. And those that don't embrace it are probably going to be left behind.
Well, it's just, the same thing, when I saw my transactions jump from when I was unassisted to then when I hired my first assistant.
Okay, so what was that?
It was huge.
Like 80 deals a year to like double?
I mean, you double double your capacity, and then all of a sudden, then you get to a point where you can't handle that. And so one person can only do so much until they start making mistakes, right? Or they start burning out or something's happening. So that's why we have 3 admin right now. And basically, if you look at it, we have 5 admins. So our admin...
Because you're two TCs.
Yep.
2 TCs, marketing agency that you contract through.
So the 2 virtual assistants, and they have their tasks, right, are things that I have going on behind the scenes. Then I have my listing manager, so she assists me with all my listings, and she has been with me for 9 years now.
Wow.
And dude, I'm going to tell you right now, that girl, she could outsell on the listing side. She's a powerhouse,
rock star.
I mean, to the point where she's like, "Joe, we got this offer on this. Did you see it?" And I said, "Yeah, I saw it." And she's like, "What do you think about a counter offer of this, this, this?" I said, "Couldn't say it better myself."
It's amazing.
So there are some transactions where once I recommend a price and recommend what needs to be done to bring the house to the market, she takes it to close. And I don't even...
Yeah.
I mean, essentially it's just a call at the end of saying, "Hey, congratulations. Thanks for, trusting us to get it done." Or maybe there's something that happens mid-transaction where I got to jump in and calm and reassure the customer that everything's going to be okay. But for the most part, I mean...
That's probably the biggest tip I give people that are trying to, and it's the hardest. I've always talked about this. Loan officers, the hardest point to break through as an LO is around 6 loans a month, or 5 loans a month, 4, 5, 6 loans a month, because they don't have enough business to make that first hire, but they have to make that first hire to go bring on more business. And then once they make that hire, what's their job responsibilities description? Who's going to hold them accountable? Who's going to train them? What's their opportunity? What's their career trajectory? And you have to have all those things kind of laid out so that you can bring on that person, and then you can grow your business.
And then you have to know what that person's goals are, because not everybody's wired the same. Some people are happy doing that 6 a month, and some people want to do 30 a month. Right. And if you're going to do 30 a month, then who's processing your loan matters, right? And who's going to board those things, right? Because what's the reality that you're doing, that you're boarding all 30 of those things? Probably not.
No.
I mean, you'll kill yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no way that you can do quality business doing that, right?
Well, you and I are sitting here right now. We're generating leads.
Right.
We're getting leads by the
right
second.
now.
We're getting applications taken in or contracts taken in. We're getting listings. We're getting, closing. We're getting loan docs to go out. But you have to build the business in it. I think sometimes people look at teams like us, right? And they're like, oh, well, of course. And it's like, well, no, it took years to build, and failures, which we talked about, aren't failures. They're really just lessons, and like pivoting and recalibrating your system and your process constantly.
Upgrading it, yeah.
And then it becomes to where it's sustainable, because if you don't do it, then you just burn out. I mean, you could be a 1 to 2 person and have like still manage, but like you're always needing that next deal. You're always like, oh, where's that next deal coming from? Because you've got bills coming up. But like, I think to really have a sustainable life, you have to build a team. And I think to build a team, you have to be on a team for a long period of time.
You have to do it. You have to go to school somewhere. And then you want to pick, if it's a new person, you want to look at, like, what does that person's life look like? Okay? Because it goes beyond that. Like, is he making a lot of money, but it's broken? Like, is this guy, who's your mentor look like? If the guy's, he's killing it by financial, standards, but man, home doesn't look that great. Or, I saw that guy. Yeah, he's, looks like he's one cheeseburger away from a heart attack. Or, what is it? Like, what's their brand? What's their brand? And again, you may say, well, yeah, dude, I do want to hit the clubs every night. I do want to be like so-and-so and live that type of life. Then go ahead, be with that team. But if you, it just depends on what you feel, where you want to be at the end of the road, right? Or maybe, hey, I want to have that life. I want to, have those kids, and I want to have all those businesses. I want to be able to go and fly to Arizona, whenever I want to. I want to be able to go to Mexico, come back, and not say, oh man, I really got to come back and grind right now because I took a week off. No, you come back and it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Almost to the point where it's boring. I mean, I always try to reinvent myself to
It's
get excited.
really rewarding though.
It is, but I mean, you have to be consistent and repeatable, and you do the same stuff day after day.
Systems.
Yeah.
It's just systems and standards.
Don't you feel like the real estate industry has also provided opportunities outside the real estate industry as well?
Totally.
I mean, we could literally be here all night talking about this, and I'm looking over here at Rosie and Corey, and they're like, "Oh God."
I think Corey yawned once or twice.
We were like, we got a game to attend, but I feel so blessed to be in this industry because of the opportunities outside of it, which would, I would not have had those opportunities or seen these different industries
or been able to do it, or been able to be a part of it. Because sometimes, look, it's funny. You have all these, when you don't have any money, you have all these great ideas. There's people that don't have money, have great ideas. And then there's people that have all the money and don't have great ideas, but It's nice to be in that situation where you have working capital to where if an opportunity presents itself that you can do it, right? And you can create passive income and generational wealth, and be a good example to your kids and to other people, right? So they could look at you and say, it can be done. Like, if you really see where, me and my wife grew up, then we're an anomaly. But what we want to do is be an example for our people to say, hey,
this is possible.
It can happen to anybody, but you got to put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make the sacrifices. You have to change your environment.
Mm-hmm.
You are a product of your environment. I don't care what anybody says. It is what it is. I mean,
yep.
You're
a product of the people you spend the most amount of time with, the 5 top people you spend time with. Yeah. What do those people look like? What are they doing daily? How are they eating? Are they working out? Are they reading? Are they growing? Are they educating themselves?
Well, do you want to be stimulated too? Like, how do you want to grow? Like, mentally, you have to be stimulated. That's like why you and I, when we have talks, we're having good quality talks, because the iron sharpening the iron.
It's high vibration. I learned that the first time I met you. I think I said about 10 words. in that hour, but I was so fascinated by the stories, and it was like,
Yeah.
I was like, man, I love the vulnerability too. Like, I just appreciate when people are authentic. You know, it's been proven that authenticity is the number one emotion that you can feel, or frequency you can feel. Like, it's not hatred, it's not love, it's authenticity.
So it's probably more of a therapy session for me. I think I just needed somebody to listen to me, bro. That's what it was. But thanks for that.
Nonetheless,
thanks for that. I appreciate that.
I enjoyed the heck out of it. I enjoyed the heck out of this. So, I mean, this was a lot to unpack in an hour. I think it's probably one of our longer podcasts, which, I mean, we're going to continue this on, not mic'd up later on. And just truly, truly appreciative for you to come in and share your knowledge, experience, the things that you've, obviously accomplished, but none of it came from just someone handing it to you. I mean, mentioned you started off, your roots were from a northern New Mexico town that wasn't a lot of abundance or affluence. You grew up, you were provided for, and you had, you were provided for, but you didn't have that example of like, people weren't driving Ferraris in your town. And I don't peg you as a guy like that, but I'm sure you maybe have owned one or two, or maybe bought one and sold one, or some sort of exotic car. I think everybody does at some point when they make it. But
you go through that phase.
Yeah.
You go through that phase.
I have an appreciation for well-made things.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I look at it. It's not a vanity thing as it is more of like a highly made, but that's even Shinola watches. Shinola watch is a great American-made watch. It was the saying, you don't know shit from Shinola. They made leather tapestry wax for, watches, shoes, whatever. Pivoted, started to make watches after the great Detroit auto crash in 2008 when Obama stepped in, and they make this great watch. It's not an expensive watch, but it's a well-made watch. I just have an affinity for like things that are made well, or people that do things well, or if there's, I always like when people, if I have a team member that could have a face tat and a mohawk, I don't care as long as they have style with it and they put effort into it. Right? It's like you can tell when people show up with cat hair on their sweater, or if they actually like put themselves together. So I'm going off on a tangent here. We might cut out all this stuff.
Let's
Corey.
go.
But that's the beauty of he knows me well enough, man. I'll say some stuff and he's like,
I think if you just tell it like it is, right? So that, I mean, I'm at that point in my life too. So that's great.
Well, cool, man. This has been awesome. Looking forward to the game tonight.
And thanks for having, me and Rosie out here. We appreciate it a lot. And, we're learning a lot too. We're always, learning as we go and just picking up good habits and, discarding the bad. But we appreciate being your guest out here. So
awesome.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, Joe.